Proudly South African Nissan pair Hannes Grobler and Richard Leek dominate day one of one of the toughest Toyota 1000 desert races ever. Atang Magegheneni well on his way to realizing his dream of becoming the first Motswana to win his home race after a faultless performance in the Total Jimco. And reigning Class E champions Mark Cronje and Chris Birkin deliver another giant-killing performance to bring their Castrol Toyota Hilux home third overall.
The South African Off-Road Championship is proudly brought to you by ABSA. Speak to ABSA first for fast, flexible vehicle finance. We can also structure an asset finance solution to suit your business needs. It's really never been easier.
It was an early start for some on Saturday as they prepared for racing Section 1 of the Toyota 1000 Desert Race, round 3 of the ABSA Off-Road Championship. With 74 vehicles leaving the start line in the space of 12 minutes, the dust would make it sheer hell for crews to find their way, let alone race in the opening stages of the event. Local fans turned out in their thousands at the start and elsewhere on the route. Despite the weather having turned cold and the skies being overcast, there was no forecast of rain, which would have helped settle the dust. What were the chances of an older beam axle special vehicle like the Plastotech Raceco, crewed by Richard Schilling and Rob Walk, beating the more fancied A-arm Jimcos and Bats?
There's one about 2 seconds behind us, but we're there. I think more so the fact that in an old car, this car is nearly 20 years old, we're the 6th special overall. Kind of says something about good old cars can still do well, and just keep going today. Looking forward to it.
We don't mind starting third. We'd like to finish first though. No, it's advantageous in the morning. The bush is very thick. So look, we went as quickly as we could yesterday, but with a lot of reserve. So hopefully halfway through the morning we should get to the front. But it's a 2-day race. It's 1,000 kilometers, 500 each day, so it's a long way. We actually got to look after the car, not to have any problems with punches or wrong slotting, because we found yesterday it was a little bit difficult to navigate, but otherwise it was great. So we hope to set a good pace, which we will. We've got a good start position. Only got 2 cars in front, so we look forward to a good race, man.
Ons lê nou op die oomblik spring ons tweede in die klas weg, so ek gaan kyk of ons die posisie kan tweede hou en dan môre oorvat, kyk of ons kan klaarmaak. So ons moet môre, vandag moet ons maar ewe hard ry, want die ouens se bakkies is almal ewe vinnig deesdae, so ons sal moet hard ry om voor te bly en ons hoop alles loop goed, ons voorbereiding is reg vir die bakkie. So hoop maar hou maar duime vas.
We're just going to have to try and sort of keep a fair distance behind the Nissans and the Fords, because they're pretty quick, and we'll see what happens at the end of the day.
It's a good place to start second, especially if you have to just get the cattle out of the way and also look for the road. There's some places today that you have just to follow the markers, and that's not always the easiest to do if you're in the front.
Just what made the boss quick. I looked at him.
The moment of truth had arrived for Glenn Hall, who showed on Friday that he had lost none of his talent gained over many years of rallying. But how would he perform in the tough world of off-road racing, where endurance is the key? The Minister of Environment, Wildlife and Tourism, Mrs. Pelanomi Vernon, flagged off the leading group. Paul and Jordan were in a determined mood, and with no dust, they were able to steadily open up the gap on the rest of the field. Grobler and Leek weren't too concerned about starting second and had decided to play a waiting game up until the designated service point at Manshwabisi, and then attack on the way back to Gaborone. Woolridge and Scholthammer had opted for a similar strategy and were confident that the Team Ford Racing Ranger had the measure of the proudly South African Nissans, where Smith and Minute had only one objective in mind: beat the trucks. 2000 Toyota 1000 winners Mark Corbett and Jean Moore were out to win a second time and intended staying out of the way of tree stumps, which ended their run in 2003, while Magegheneni and Carolyn had also decided to play a waiting game on day one. Paul Colin Jordan retired after 13 kilometres, and it was now all over to Grobler and Leek, who had extended their lead over Woolridge and Scholthammer to just over 6 minutes in a race that was proving to be extremely harsh on man and machine. The Team Ford Racing pair had pulled out all the stops but just couldn't close the gap on the leading Nissan. Interestingly, the race was taking far longer to complete than predicted, with crews spending more than 7.5 hours in the cockpit. Atang Mekhekeneni and Bux Carolyn's race was going according to schedule. The new partnership hadn't picked up any punctures or mechanical problems on the Total Jimco and was virtually assured of the overnight lead. Castrol Toyota pair Mark Cronje and Chris Birkin managed to get by Cox and Pitchford when they started running low on fuel in the Arnold Chas Cars Nissan hardbody and were forced to slow their pace dramatically. The Class D championship leaders had built up a 7-minute lead over the Nissan crew, and right now the odds were not in favour of Cox and Pitchford scoring a second successive Class D win. Shamir Variawa and Nadeem Dudhia started 72nd in the Oven Fresh Biscuits Porter, but a storming drive saw them finish in second place on day one ahead of Clint Gibson and Mike Brown, who picked up 2 punches and relied on a borrowed wheel to get to the overnight stop. There was an almighty battle raging in Class E with Freiburg businessmen Hugo and Jaap de Bruin, who had won the class on their last 2 outings in the Castrol Toyota Hilux 2.7i, just managing to keep Zane Pierce and Henny Vosloo in the Castrol Toyota Hilux KZTE, raced by Cassie Coetzee and Oki Fourie last year, at bay. Gary Berthold and Siegfried Rosso in the Advanced Soft Nissan hardbody had moved up to 10th on the road, 7th overall in the production vehicle category, and 3rd in Class D, ahead of Class D winners on the Nissan Dealer 400, Paolo Piazzomosso and Rod Herring in the Castrol Toyota Hilux, who had been slowed by a puncture and overheating caused by a faulty cooling fan that was repaired at the designated service point. Consistency had paid off for Nielsen Zelda van der Walt in the Nissan hardbody, who are now 3rd in Class E and 2 minutes ahead of JP Augustin and Johan Dubel in the Class D GBS Racing Nissan hardbody, who are in turn almost 3 minutes ahead of Henry Zematin and Bodo Schwegler in the Mastercraft PlayStation Pajero, which was performing far better than in recent months. Nick Harper and Andrew Chalupsky were 4th overall in the special vehicle category and, apart from 3 punches, had had a trouble-free run in the BAT racing entry. Arnold du Plessis and George Baker's only problem on the BB Auto Nissan hardbody was a puncture 50 kilometres from the finish. The odds of them making up the 45-minute deficit on the Class D leaders, Cronje and Birkin, were rather slim. Mohammed Noble and Richard Hope were the only survivors in Class S and simply had to finish day 2 to take over the Class S championship lead from Nick Gosler and Warren Bowie. Marcus Taylor and Mark Deschelaine dropped down to 6th in Class B when a condenser failed, but worked their way back into the lead with 20 kilometres to go. Rookie driver Gavin Cronje and 4 times winner of the Toyota 1000, Robin Houghton, finished 4th in Class E in the Castrol Toyota Hilux and 37 minutes behind the class leaders, with Team Ford Racing's development team of Babi Rabalusa and Kulili Fakalisa a further 2.5 minutes behind. Brothers Hamish and Alistair Stubbs led Class B for most of the day, but had to settle for 2nd behind former Class B champions Taylor and Deschelaine, while Henry Costain and Renier Euster lost time in the Atlas Copco BAT when they stopped to give the stranded John Ware Smith and Jeff Minnett some fuel for the Kopanong Hotel Super Team Jimco. Arnold Pistorius and Theo Grobler had a good run in the Raceco and finished 3rd in Class B at the end of day 1. Brothers Mark and Stuart Moffat struggled in the Bosel N1 4x4 Land Rover, which was eventually classified 8th in Class D. Warren Klaassen and Kim Dixon also overcame a host of problems on the Radflow Zarco Light to finish 4th in Class B, while husband and wife Marius and Tracy van Vuren brought their Bosel N1 4x4 Toyota Hilux home 6th in Class E. reigning special vehicle champion, Gil Nel, lost over an hour replacing a distributor on the Look ATE Truggy and had to be happy with 5th in Class B at the overnight stop. While early Class E leaders, Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst, lost time when the Tyco Trucks Toyota Hilux ran out of fuel and they finished 7th in class. Brothers Yuri and Andre Duplessis were the last place finishers in the BB Auto Nissan Hardbody. The finish was in sight for Hannes Frobler and Richard Leek in the proudly South African Nissan Hardbody. They completed the 500-kilometer route in a time of 7 hours, 30 minutes and 19 seconds. Only 2 Class T vehicles survived day 1 of the Toyota 1000, with 5 Class D and 4 Class E vehicles making it into the top 10. A clean run for Atang Mekhekaneni and Bux Carolyn in the total Jimco. The special vehicle category leaders crossed the line to the tumultuous applause of their huge fan base. The more powerful Class A cars dominated the top placings, with only 4 Class B vehicles in the top 10. In total, only 29 of the 74 starters managed to finish day 1 of the event.